Welcome to the Norwood Conservation Commission meeting for January 16, 2019. Recording announcement. Anybody have a recording device? Okay. Open roll call.
Peter Bamber.
Joe DiMaria.
John Gear.
Lee Leach.
Cheryl Doyle.
Chris Capizio?
Stephen Washburn.
Al
Okay.
Getz.
Excuse me. Top on the agenda, notice of intent, United Consultants Incorporated representing DCD Realty DEP file number 2510503, Norwood number 201814, project location 84 Moore Street, Norwood, Mass.
You got my original on the conference?
Make a motion to continue to February 20th. Is 7:30 on the 20th good to,
Yeah, that's
Yes.
mine.
so do that? And then, before you ask for a second, any members of the commission would then provide Al with a list of questions and that he could get to the applicant before the next meeting.
And the reason for postpone?
Is we just received the materials and need time to review them. I understand they're still going to be providing additional materials.
Okay, great. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So,
Good. 7:30, we'll put you on the agenda for 7:30, yeah.
They're gonna do that. Mr. Chairman, David Hearn on behalf of the applicant. Mr. Clemmy was asking if there are questions from members of the board, and I think that's what Mr. Bamford
Yes,
was alluding
yeah.
to. Those get forwarded to us. We do understand that the peer review company is still reviewing some matters, and that
Mhm.
we understand that there's further material or response and comment coming from them in the next few days, and then we'll be able to respond to that and any questions that the commission may have also.
Correct.
And then we'll come back on February 20th at 7:30.
Yep, sounds good.
That's fine, we understand that, thank
Yep.
you.
Thank you.
I do have a question.
Thank you.
I do have a question that you may wish to address. I have not seen any plan that indicates where the current development is that you are replacing. In other words, your filing indicated that it's a rehabilitation of some work that was done. I assume it was a parking lot in that open area, but I don't have any drawings that indicate where the parking lot was, what you found there that indicates it was developed previously.
Are you only referring to the bus lot?
No, I'm returning to the upper lot.
Property, are you?
I'm referring to the upper lot.
The
That's
upper
where-
lot?
Yeah, the upper lot.
I mean, this is being
Otherwise-
presented as a redevelopment.
It's done as a redevelopment, but you need to show that there was something there that you're redeveloping. There needed to be a building, a parking lot, some structure.
There's a building there, there's a parking area there. It's been there for years.
Okay.
84 Moore
Shows
Street.
on the existing.
Right, but there's open land, and the way the statute is written, as I read it, is that if you're developing in a riverfront area, those areas that have been previously developed, a building, you're knocking the building down, redoing it, that gets replaced on a one-to-one basis. On a place that has not been shown as having something there in that buffer, you need to replace that area on a two-to-one basis. That's in the act. So you need to look at that and find that.
I'll leave it to our engineers to
Okay.
respond to that. Mr. DeGioia.
and, well, we
Okay,
already
so-
closed.
Yeah, we already
Yeah.
closed on that, so let's
Yeah.
stop discussion on that.
We'll look at that, and we'll have that in mind before we come back
Okay.
in 2 weeks.
And any other questions, if they could get to Al.
They'll
Yep,
come
they-
from Mr.
No, that's
absolutely.
exactly the
Yep.
process.
Excellent,
Thank you.
excellent.
And he'll
Thank you.
relay them to you.
Right.
Very good. And we'll
Thank
get
you.
all the answers back to you.
Very good, thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much.
Have a good evening.
Okay, next on the agenda, request for minor modification, Weston and Sampson representing James Collins, Norwood Municipal Light Department, DEP file number 2510494, Norwood number 201805, project location 136 Access Road. Do you have a presentation on that, or?
None other than the drawings that you have in front of you. I can give a brief explanation. The Norwood Light Department has requested that we replace We have currently the transformer
Mhm.
on the site. They've requested that we replace the pad there with a precast concrete vault underneath the transformer. And we're already doing, a fair amount of work within the buffer zone. This is some additional work that we're proposing to excavate in order to place this below grade in a permanent condition. It allows the light department to be able to access the wiring for the primary electrical service in the future in case they want to add solar panels, for example, or change the
Yeah.
transformer, et cetera.
So the vault that's going in is strictly for the transformer?
It's strictly for the primary cabling to the transformer. The
Okay.
transformer sits on top of it. It's still
Yeah.
above grade. It's
Okay.
just an empty tank, essentially, below grade that allows access.
Okay.
So there's a manhole cover, there's an access point where they can pump water out. Presumably it will be part of, we can do an addition to their stormwater control plan, that whenever they do pump water out of it, that it goes into the stormwater system, not into the wetland.
Mhm.
We're also stipulating that during construction, any dewatering that's necessary there will go into the stormwater system, not into the wetlands as well.
Al, do you have any comments on it?
Well, the first thing is, I think we can consider this as a minor change. It's the same location, slightly bigger, but the important thing is that this is a forward-looking change. When it was first brought to my attention, the idea was that it would enable them to have batteries in there for future use if they get a solar system and things like that. So I think that instead of building just a slab and then coming back to us in a couple of years and say, oh, we should have done something else, I think this is a forward-looking change, and it doesn't affect the environment much at all. So I recommend we consider it a minor change and accept the plan, which would then show up on the as-built for the final project. That's
But you can't close that. You-
So that's what I'm thinking. It's a big box, and it'll be below grade, whereas the slab was going to sit on top of the grade.
Anybody have any questions or comments? Excuse me.
I'll make a motion to approve of it.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next. We're doing good on time. Norwood Engineering, notice of intent, Norwood Engineering, represented Paul Liston, Vanderbilt Realty Trust LLC, AEP file number 2510504, Norwood number 201901, project location 290 Vanderbilt Ave, Norwood, Mass.
Good evening.
Good evening.
David Johnson, Norwood Engineering, representing Paul Weston, who's here, Vanderbilt Realty Trust. What we're here for is to increase the area of pavement in the rear parking lot due to truck turning movements. Can no longer come in here due to the length of trucks and cabs. They damage the existing bituminous berm, drive up over the berm, and in some cases have gotten stuck on this side of the berm. So we're proposing to eliminate the existing bituminous berm and replace it with vertical granite curbing in this approximately this location, and then grade from the existing location of the berm up to the granite here, so that everything continues to flow in this direction and is picked up by the existing drainage system. Currently, There's a trench drain in this location that's severely deteriorated. It's rusted, it's collapsed, and as part of the project, we're proposing to replace that with a new trench drain. It's currently connected to a drainage system that goes in this direction and discharges over here. As part of the project, we're also proposing to attempt to clean up the runoff that's coming off the site now by installing a storm tech unit in this location, which would pick up the drainage from this catch basin as well as the drainage from the trench drain. This whole site currently drains pretty much into this trench drain. So we're proposing to replace that with a 1 foot wide drain. The resource areas you have on the property are here, BVW. The Neponset River is out here. The 200-foot riparian is in this dark blue line. So we're out of the riparian zone. The dash line is a flood zone that has an elevation attached to it. So we're proposing to stay out of that. This project was reviewed and an order of conditions was issued in 2011 for the same project. In 2014, the approval expired, or was to expire, and the commission issued an extension. That extension expired in 2017. The reason the work wasn't done as part of the previous approvals was our client was only a minority owner of the property, and the majority owner did not want to expend the funds to do the work that was permitted. My client now is the 100% owner of the property, and we're back to get this approved so he can go forward and complete the work that's been reviewed twice now, approved twice. So we're hoping that we can get that approval and get an order of conditions issued. We're fully willing to accept all of the conditions that were part of the previous approvals. One of them was, this was intended originally to be gravel when it was originally filed. As part of that previous review, the commission asked to have it paved and wanted this curbing to be replaced with either vertical granite or precast concrete, which our plan now calls for vertical curbing in that location. So that very quickly, that's what we're proposing, is to reactivate this project so the project can move forward. This area is about 2,500 square feet of additional pavement.
Okay. Al, any comments?
I looked at the original plans, and I've been out there then and now, and things have deteriorated even more than it was when we originally approved the project. So looks to me like to solve the problem is a good thing and get it so that it doesn't keep running contaminated water off the site and bring it through a system that'll clean it, because we all know that trucks that traverse the highways carry stuff with them on their tires and then on the undersides, so that there's always going to be something, and if we can filter that out with a up-to-date stormwater system, that's so much the better. So there's some positive things, and it is far away from the river. You can't even see the river itself from the site. It's, as the plan shows, 200 feet.
This is a blow up. This is a full-scale plan. And the riverfront area is right here.
Yeah. And it does flood out there. That meadow gets wet, but I haven't seen it on the the pavement, but I have seen the meadow get wet. So. But I don't think this is a bad incursion into a sensitive area out there.
Did you have a question, Joe?
I have a couple of questions. Can you show us where the property line is on that drawing?
Yeah, it's right
So you're doing work on somebody else's property?
here. Yes.
Are they aware that you're going to file on their deed that that is being done? You have their permission written?
The owner has a easement hold for the property.
Has a what?
Has an easement hold, has rights in an easement to, has the exclusive right and easement to use that area containing approximately 3,000 square feet designated easement area on a plan by Norwood Engineering for the purpose of maintaining parking areas, driveways, vehicle maneuvering areas, and other like purposes relating to the use of such improvements that are on the property. So
Okay.
he has a leasehold.
You recognize that that property needs to be encumbered with the orders that will exist. And you will not be able to go ahead until you encumber that property.
I understand.
Okay. The other thing is that that area that's behind there is from when they developed that park, is one of the retention basins. Now, I have taken pictures of the area, and there is not enough room to put 15 feet between the pavement and the drop-off to the retention barrier, which is what you're proposing. Now, if it wasn't a detention barrier and it wasn't a lake, I wouldn't be extremely concerned, but it's vegetated wetland at this point that you intend to pave, which is not what the Conservation Commission's all about.
I would disagree that we're intending to pave. We have a delineated line, and
Well,
in this location, and the amount of disturbance ranges from 0 here to 0 here. Is probably 6 feet in here, 14 feet here, 10 feet here, and we're not encroaching on the wetland in any location, and we're staying out of the flood zone as well. So I'm not sure where
All right.
you're speaking about.
okay.
Um,
There is a
From the
drop
front.
of about 3 feet from the area where you propose to pave and the base of the retention basin, which is the bank of the retention basin. In fact, the drawing that you show here, which shows a existing berm, the berm does not go in that area where the nearly right angle is. That berm is missing. So the drawing isn't correct. You show the berm line going completely around the property with a double line, and it's not there.
I'm not sure where you're speaking about.
This section right here, the berm ends here and starts again over here. That berm is missing. It's not on the plan shown as missing.
I mean, in this area here?
Yeah, that's gone.
Yeah.
And you stand there, there's not 15 feet between there and the 4-foot drop down to the base of the retention basin.
And you're calling this the retention basin, the wetland?
Yes. The wetland isn't just a wetland, it's a retention basin from when they
understand.
built that property.
I understand.
Now, I would suggest that we take another look at that and get this drawing cleaned up. We do not need to see overhead wires. We do not need to see a lot of stuff here. We do need to see some dimensions. The dimension that I checked and is correct is from the building to the edge of the pavement, or what you call edge of the pavement, which is 120 feet. It does measure 120 feet. Now you're going to add 15 feet more than that, and as you can take a look at these pictures, it does not look like there's 15 feet between where I'm standing on the edge of the picture and the 4-foot drop or 3-foot drop down to the bottom of the retention basin. I should really like to see a drawing that shows the elevations
Well, we should
as
continue-
existing and as proposed.
I'm not sure where the pictures were taken from, so I can't comment on that part of it. I know that we're not encroaching on the wetland. We've got.
Well, what's the
we've got
difference in
existing-
height?
We've got existing grades along where this curving is going. The existing grades are staying as existing, they're not changing. And we have an elevation of 50.3 or something here. And an elevation of 48.8 or 50, basically 59, so there's a foot drop between here and here.
And closer to the corner?
Right
No, the
here?
other way.
This way?
Yeah,
Which
right
way?
where,
Right here?
there, yeah.
Yeah, the existing grade is 48.27 on the pavement.
Mhm.
The grade at, back here where we're talking about extending to is at 48.3. So it's
And what's it a
essentially
foot beyond that?
48.
You need to show the bottom of that thing, because it drops at least 3 feet.
We show the 48 contour, which is this line here. And we
But
have-
you're too close to the edge.
I have to agree with them because it's, like, this is the parking lot, and then there might be this much of grass, and then it drops down into all that compensatory storage. And I know the water comes up high, and I know it does flood those back lots and that.
Mhm.
Why are they taking all the top level of the grass and going right to the edge of the drop? They're going right to the edge of the drop of the compensatory storage. And I know I'll show you, over the summertime, over a weekend, this side of the lot, somebody came in and repaved, and it went further than what the existing at that time was, and this whole area got repaved, and it went further this way. That's a newer pavement out there, it's a
Yeah, I
newer
had it-
pavement out there.
That's the binder coat that we put out because there was some pavement that was broken up. He did not change, he did not go beyond what the pavement was. He did not move beyond that edge.
I mean, the existing edge that was there was because to hold it in, and if you recall back in 2011, the reason why the berm is missing is because snowplows and the tractor trailers bounce off it. I actually worked in that building 35 years ago, and there's very little room for the tractor trailers, and so I would watch them with their tractors bouncing on the berm, breaking it up, and then the snowplows would come in and take it away. So, I mean, I've seen that firsthand.
Oh, it's a hard lot.
That's a real difficult lot.
It's a really, really hard lot. What would you do with the snow then from the parking lot if you're taking away from all that grassy area? Where would you put the snow then? Because you're losing all that grass area that the snow normally parks on. Is there like a snow maintenance plan just for that then? So it's not just chugged into the compensatory storage?
Paul, do you know what your current operating procedure is for the snow
Yeah,
plowing?
they've had, well, when we've had significant amount of snow, they've had to actually take some off-site. But they do come in and relocate it. I know they push it over to the side of the building where the first entrance is. There's some more grass area there as you turn into the entrance towards the left, towards the building.
Well, they certainly pushed it right to that area that you're proposing to pave.
Well, we could have it as part of an order of condition that if they're going to pave that top half, then they can't use the compensatory storage as the snow storage.
Well, we need to do something about protecting that bank down to that detention basin. You can't run a truck right up to the edge of that without building some sort of retaining wall or,
Can you put fencing on it?
well, just the weight of the truck up against that is,
Yeah.
there's nothing to keep,
The tractor trailer from
no,
going
there's nothing to
off.
keep that from caving in. When you put the weight of a truck next to the edge of
There
a,
used to be a perimeter fence,
Yeah,
and as this gentleman was saying,
Yep.
the trucks would just knock it over all the time because there wasn't enough room to make the turning radius. I understand what you're saying here, and certainly willing to go out and let's take a look and remeasure what that plan is, or the actual distance is to the drop-off you're talking about. But, yeah, there's no intent to put something down that's not gonna pull it out.
if you're right on, say you're right, the curbing and the asphalt would go right to the edge into the compensatory storage.
I don't believe so.
Okay, if it okay, hypothetically, if it
They're
does,
concerned with this, like, pushing out.
can a fence go
Yeah,
in?
that-
Because
that-
if a
that's
tractor
the problem.
trailer,
yeah.
say they go, I know a lot of these trailers
Yes,
go on
exactly.
those
Yeah,
docks,
they're going-
the
they wanna
different
go right to
docks in
here.
the park.
Yeah.
They'll go early in the morning and
This is
during the
at
winter
scale.
time, it's harder to see.
This is from here to here, it's 15 feet.
Right now, if a tractor trailer misses your asphalt, they've got that grassy area to
Yes.
hit.
Mhm.
If you're expanding your parking lot and you're going into the grassy area, the only thing they're gonna hit is the compensatory storage. And then there's a liability that if they fall into the compensatory storage and it's during the flood time, which is normally 9 months out of the year, that field, that meadow is flooded, they can contaminate it, which means they contaminate the river because all that water recedes back into the river. And that's a breeding area for all the wildlife, the ducks and a bunch of other funky looking birds that are out there. So can you just look at it as just a way to keep them from jumping
Sure.
the curbing so they don't flip into
Yeah.
the compensatory storage?
And that was the intent, was to put enough distance between them and the building so that they wouldn't jump over. But I know what you're saying. You're
Even
saying
if you
a
put like
fence-
bollards on like each of the curves,
Mhm.
because I know when you come around, they're doing that in a blind almost,
Right.
because if there's.
Well, we really
track-
can't design it for them.
No, but I'm just saying,
I had a question,
I'm not designing. If they put bollards or something on that blind turn, if there's a tractor trailer here, it'll stop them from going into the storage, the compensatory storage,
Right.
and flipping. That would be my greatest concern if a trailer landed in the water and contaminated the river.
I had a question just on that to follow up, Cheryl, and that is on the detail for the curb. It doesn't have a dimension on the height of the curb?
Six.
What is that, 6
Typically
inches?
6 inches.
And why is it so small, so low?
That's what typically a curb is, 6 inches.
And that's gonna keep the vehicles from going up and over that, the trucks? That's my question.
Well, you had mentioned before a granite curb.
That was a problem you
Right.
mentioned.
So a granite curb is gonna go down into the
Yes,
subgrade.
granite curb.
Yeah, they show it, right?
There is not enough there to retain a curb that goes down. When you go back 15 feet, you don't have 15 feet from the edge of the current pavement to flat space before it drops. And if you do, you're going to be right at the drop.
I guess my two questions would be to ask you to come back and define the elevations that Mr. DiMarera is asking about where it drops, And then two, it would be your easement, is that defined on the plan?
Yes,
It's not that heavy black dashed line I see.
this is the easement area.
In their defense though, because when they came back to us in 2000, are you telling me?
No, I'm
Oh.
just thinking back to that hearing.
Okay, no, in 2011, when they came before us and they had presented, I asked for the copy of the easement, and they did give us the copy, and I kept the folder, so we do have the copy.
I know, but I thought
Yeah.
you said it was 3,000 square feet or something along those lines, and
And
so
there's-
I was
Yeah.
just curious as to if it was defined appropriately.
Ooh, sorry, didn't mean to hit the mic. Oh, it's just the camera.
there's actually-
Okay.
Me being the one that throws nothing away.
Can I ask if you've done like any sort of turning analysis to determine whether or not this extension
But I
is
didn't
really
extend
adequate
it
for
over here, but it's
like the
right
typical
here.
truck size and
Okay.
Yeah,
logistics
the easement
in place here?
is large. This is only a part of what that easement is.
It was done, I
But
believe, at
when
the
you look,
time
at-
it was
when you go
originally
onto that
filed in
site, there's no room to
2011.
put,
No, really, I spent a lot of
15.
time on
We
that.
can
yeah.
show that on a plan, to show the turning movements for a typical 55-foot tractor trailer.
Or you can walk and just see the imprint on the grass area where.
Get a good sense
where
of the,
they're- yeah.
the
Trucks
current
are
turning
bigger
motions.
now than they were
He
20 years
he
ago,
does
so-
take very, very good care of his building. The building upkeep, everything top notch.
So the real
But
area of concern is on
unfortunately,
here then.
You got compensatory
Right in
storage
the-
Yeah,
behind
from
there.
here,
Quarters
from
there,
here,
yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
bad.
It's
I mean,
very
your
cramped
drop
back
off
there.
is 15 feet is a foot or so, but in here it's 3 to 4 feet. Right.
It's
So-
really.
So realistically, my question was again, just to define how close it is to the change in elevation. So is there an issue there? Because it is a cramped situation, and it certainly does make sense if feasible to improve that situation.
Well,
Just
as I said,
because-
we've shown spot grades along what would be the edge of the pavement.
But beyond that, do you have,
But we're not grading beyond that because that's going to.
right, but we need to know where that is beyond that is our point. Where is the compensatory drop-off?
Oh, it's right here.
Right, but
In
you
this
have-
In this particular location, it's right up against the flood zone, but it's this distance from the BVW.
Right where you're showing there,
Right, that's right,
if you look at the elevations you've got on that, on the back side of that added apron,
right there.
to going basically just by eye on the scale that's on this drawing, if you go in 15 feet, you're dropping 3 feet anyway, right? Would you agree from that point? From the back of the apron, if you go in 15 feet, would you say you're down 3 feet?
Yeah.
Let's see, 48.3 here, you got a spot grade here of 46.5.
44 now.
44.7?
Because that's the question the three of us
Yeah,
are
so-
on.
Yeah.
My concern is that curbing that you would put in, which is a great idea, isn't gonna stand the test of time, because there's nothing behind it to hold it.
Well, if you look at it in a little detail, we're proposing to put a small amount of fill up against that curbing. The curbing will be set into the ground. It'll be set in concrete. The typical granite curbing is set with 6 inches of concrete on either side and 6 inches underneath. And then there'll be a small amount of fill just to back up that area. This,
Simply can't put fill there without it going into that wetland. It just won't work.
well, I'd respectfully disagree that the wetland is out
All right.
here. And this distance.
No, I'm talking about the bottom. The bottom of that retention basin is wetland. The grass that's growing up at the top is a reed that's a wetland reed. So the edge of that currently is wetland, pretty much. So I would suggest that what we do is we get some detailed drawing of that area on the other side of that, get rid of all the stuff that we don't need, the overhead wires and whatever else is on there that confuses the issue, and make a nice, clean plan that shows pre- and post-development. where the land area is, what the elevations are in, at a minimum of 2 feet difference, and make another plan and submit it. It's just that simple.
Because the way I perceive it right now is you're going to be putting that curbing in, and tractor trailers are just gonna be bouncing off of that. And I don't care that you've got 6 inches of cement, if you've got a loaded trailer with a tractor hitting that, it's just gonna blow it out. So if there's a significant elevation change on the far side of it, which I can't tell from the current plan.
I think it would be helpful to have contours present,
Well,
elevation contours versus just
exactly.
kind of without a fence scattered spot
That's what
elevations.
Stevens.
It would help me
correct.
understand what like the slope was doing there, where it existed and how aggressive it was, because right now, I don't see enough elevation
It is a little
information to
vague.
really get a sense of the topography that's present there.
Have you gone out there at all?
No.
Take a walk up there.
I actually, my office is painfully close to this
I know, but
location, so.
take a walk behind
It
there.
would be easy enough to do so.
Yeah.
I agree that you need to do something, we just need to understand what the limitations are there. So can we request a cleaner plan with a pre and post development?
Sure, I'm not sure you're gonna get any contours because the difference in grade is less than a foot.
Well, I think
Which
specifically
is
like
why-
contours in the
And
realm of the
beyond.
slope that could potentially be a cause of concern or consideration in relation to how reinforced that curbing that's being installed is, right? Like, there's definitely an elevation change from what I'm hearing in regards to this compensatory storage basin that's present in the top of the lot. And I'm just having a tough time, like, looking at the drawing, as someone that's like very tuned into this type of drawing and mapping. I'm having just a difficult time ascertaining what slope exists going from the edge of the parking lot down into this basin, and how close the curbing that's being installed is to said slope. Again, like, kind of just to find some confidence in just how much reinforcement will lie behind the curb, like, based on how aggressive the slope is. You know, if you have just a flat run going out from the edge of the curb, then it's wildly reinforced with all of that soil material. But if you've got some aggressive, 3-to-1 slope or something coming off the edge of the pavement, then there's gonna be a far less amount of material present to reinforce that curbing that's being installed in the case that a loaded trailer backs into it or whatever else is going on. I think that generally speaking, this is a great idea. I'm just having a difficult time with the elevation information that's currently present on the plan, getting a good sense of what's going on with the relationship between the edge of the paving that's been proposed and the curbing alignment that'll be installed, and just what the lay of the land is on the backside of that curbing. I
That's
think
what the rest of us are saying.
Yes,
Yes,
Contours versus
and I
spot
think that's fair.
elevations.
My intent is
Yeah,
not
it
to
would be-
put something in there that's not gonna last.
Mhm.
Right.
I
So-
agree with what's been said. that
So
this is
we
a
in
good
agreement
idea,
what we need?
It's just,
Very good idea.
You understand? Okay, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to continue it to,
Is February 20th sufficient?
Well,
Yes,
okay.
A section view might help in that corner.
sure, of the slope and the curbing,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I totally agree.
Do I have a
And
second?
if the curbing has to be
Joe may have
deeper than
something to
the
say
standard
first.
curb,
Did you have a
then we'll
comment?
have to show something deeper.
don't know whether whether we'll get the plans in time to look at the process and look at it at the next meeting. I mean, I certainly want to be able to see it.
How long do you think it'll take you to?
He's got
get
it
these
on
plans
computer.
I could give it to you by Monday.
Okay,
Okay.
so that should work.
That's fine.
Okay, so do I have a
Second.
second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
I'll file it with Al. Are you here
Yep.
Monday?
Yep.
That'd be 7:45.
Okay, so,
Maybe if you have the
Yeah.
time, we can take a walk out there with it.
yeah. So, next on the agenda,
I'll meet you guys out there if you want.
public hearing, bylaw, wetland protection regulations.
This is from you, Joe?
Yeah.
Oh, could you remind us about, they have us sign this the last meeting? Put your signature. It wasn't in the documents that you gave us before. So, where were we on this?
Well, we talked about some of the things, and I jotted down, I hope, most of what was said at the meeting, and unfortunately, I didn't get this done until the weekend, and my computer decided that it would not email anything, so I had to make a copy, take it to work, and email it.
Called a feature.
So, these are at a minimum, some of the ones that we had talked about, and I hope
On this one, Joe, no vegetation removal, shouldn't it be no native vegetation removal?
well, it's difficult, somebody may have planted something to stabilize a shoot.
How about non-invasive
All right,
vegetation removal?
okay.
Because if there's invasive, take it out.
We're good with it.
Right.
What is this one on?
This is,
What's that?
What? Whose orders are they?
This was one of the ones that she gave us last time when we signed everything with that. It's just
At
a-
our last meeting?
Yeah.
didn't you also have the?
Where's my pen? Who's got my pen?
This one here, yes?
Yeah. I stole
No,
it
no,
myself.
you already put it in there.
Does this go back?
Yeah, I'll give it.
Now, the inner and outer, that resolves that recent situation.
Are we gonna ask them, because I brought it up at the last meeting, that, prime example, here, let me do show and tell. We have this beautiful set of plans with all this stuff on it, but if anybody ever came and they go, I wanna see the filing, okay, as a builder, I know what everything is on this plan. But somebody coming off the street and they wanted to see it, there's no key on here explaining what any of this is.
Yeah, a legend should be required.
None of our plans anymore have a legend at all on them explaining what the lines,
Mm-hmm.
the wetlands, the boundaries, nothing. Nothing's on them anymore.
It's in our
And-
requirements, so.
It is in
Yeah.
our requirements, so we gotta figure out a way to enforce that.
Mhm.
Well, it's very easy, they either provide the proper documentation, or they don't get a hearing.
And they got a hearing.
Right, well, that's one, I'm not the one who sets the agenda.
But the other side of that thing is, we also, in our bylaws, indicate that they're supposed to give us 9 copies and a disc. I haven't seen a disc.
We haven't been getting the electronic copies, and we need them electronics, because if we don't have them, we do require electronic,
Right,
what's
we
gonna
got them for a
happen
little
is-
while, but
Huh?
if I got them electronically, I could spend a lot more time reviewing it.
Yeah, but also, if we have them electronically, then we don't have to pay to have these scanned
Mhm.
into the system.
Right.
And right now, we're having to pay to scan these, which is,
Well, it's odd because they're taking an electronic copy and printing them.
yep.
But that's a different issue for,
But it's
That's
part,
in our bylaw.
I
Bylaw,
understand that,
yeah.
it's already in there, so
Yeah.
that's an enforcement thing we
Right.
can look at
Mhm.
later.
Okay.
Right
We
now, we're
indicated
talking
that we
about
only
the-
want 1 copy, but maybe we should ask for,
So where were we on these
I mean,
changes?
I don't even, it wouldn't matter to drill that point, if they could somehow email it.
Yeah, like why can't we just
or
receive an
download it,
electronic?
Then it would, I don't care if it's a CD, as long as we have a copy.
Right.
So-
Yeah, we'll talk to Ramona about it.
yeah.
Okay. So the top one, B, no building area.
I just added that it should be no non-invasive vegetation removal.
Yeah, That makes sense. Anybody have any comments on that? We're gonna make the changes and vote on this as a body?
We don't have to necessarily vote on it tonight, we can,
Okay, we can review it some more, okay.
any comments, Al?
Well, on the riverfront, what we say here is great, but we have to tell them to label the line as such.
Right.
Because if they don't label it, and we see all these lines, it's a pain in the neck to try to figure out what line is what, so let's make sure they label it.
Well, that goes with that would be with the legend, which is supposed to be there, would be under our,
Well,
Well, we
the
never-
only thing is that on a lot of these plans and electronic, when you're looking at it on a small scale, all these lines join together and
Yeah.
and if there's no label, it's very confusing, so.
Well, that was why the inner and outer riverfront, we
Yeah.
haven't referred to it that way, we've always gone with the 200, 100,
Yeah.
And we
50,
need
and
them to go
25.
back to that.
So
Then
we
we-
need them to label it.
But
Yeah.
if somebody's going to refer to it on that plan, then we just needed to do this, because we saw that appear recently, so Joe has it defined there.
And that's great.
Okay. Elevation bench monument, okay, so, just,
Granite markers move up and down.
okay, I did some research into this, okay? The monuments being used as a benchmark for elevation is not a normal thing, because they do move, they'll move up and down, they tend to stay pretty stable laterally. There are other things that can be done, marking on foundations. Another thing that surprised me that a surveyor told me was a pin in the trunk of a tree, because the tree grows beyond the branch line. It doesn't grow at the base. So that's often done as, and he also said, which I didn't know, maybe some of you guys know, is if we have a topographical drawing that's giving us elevations, whether there's a benchmark on that drawing, there's a benchmark somewhere used as a reference, so
No,
we
not
can,
anymore.
we can require that it be labeled.
not
Well, they have to
anymore.
use a reference.
No, they don't use a reference. They use a thing that finds a satellite and it tells them what height, but it does not go back to what our maps indicate for flood elevations. We have obviously 3 different maps with elevations. There's the Norwood map, there's and 2 different years that change the elevation of the flood elevation. And when I spoke to and someone at DP, there's nothing, there aren't any benchmarks, or there are very few benchmarks in town, so that you can determine whether your particular instrument is reading what that benchmark says. So it'll keep everything on your site within the tolerance that it sets, but it has very little to prove that it goes to what our flood elevation is. Because we're going to a satellite, not to something that, not to a marker in the street that says this is elevation 542. And they used to do, they used to find a benchmark and bring it all the way to the site. Now they don't bother doing that anymore, they just do that, but it doesn't indicate whether they've tested that instrument at a known point that says, okay, at this point it's such and such. And it's just,
Well, the problem is then, you just said it, how are they gonna establish this benchmark to a known point? They're gonna use a satellite, right?
Yeah, typically RTK devices are used, or like a GNSS that, is.
Because if you had to do it
corrected
old
off a
school
geoid model.
and come off the old benchmark and plot it out, it would be cost prohibitive on some sites to get that mark from one point in town to another.
That's why I'm saying that they need on each site to put something in that's permanent that says, this is elevation such and such, and that's what we used as our, that's what we, this whole
So
site
it's just a
is
reference
run
point
to,
for
the
that
reference
site.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so, but the
Reference
only
point for that
problem
site.
is that this isn't a stable way of doing it. So maybe we need to research something else.
I don't know, on Vanderbilt Ave, because there's so much ledge, the marks are in the stone. You can't get them out, they're right there.
Not everybody has ledge.
Yeah.
I know. But I mean, if we can figure out a way not to give them ledge, that there could be something more permanent for marking like that.
Or would it,
Foundation was a
Well,
reasonable
foundation.
idea.
well,
on a-
what
on
about
a
the
building
idea,
is-
and this is, might
Unless
be a
they
little
rip
the
the
same,
building
is
down.
Yeah, but, I mean.
having
Yeah.
them take their device to an established benchmark, prove that it's acceptable, and then they can just work from satellite when they go to the
I thought
closest
that
benchmark.
The concern driving this was that we didn't have faith that all
Well, you're
parties
right,
or
that's-
entities operating on the site would have access to, you know, a highly accurate RTK-driven or geoid-corrected GPS capable of, you know, capturing or referencing vertical elevations in a known datum like NAVD88 or whatever. So we wanted to establish a requirement for a site benchmark that could be referenced in the case that, like, more traditional
But would
or
you
lack
need
of
to-
technology was present, is that right?
Well, to your point, would you need to have, if you can prove that they used the known technologies that do work, would you have to establish a marker if you could validate that those technologies were used? And I guess if they weren't used, maybe a marker would be required.
Don't they have to calibrate them? By, on the things that they use? Would any type of machine or equipment that's used for measuring, don't you normally have somebody that's licensed that calibrates them within a,
They do,
certain
all of them
degree?
calibrate.
Yeah, most of them
So
come with like
they'd
a
have to have a
siteable accuracy
certificate.
associated, and
Right.
in the case
But I've never
of
used one, so I couldn't begin to tell you.
of
You
a device that
have.
uses like algorithmic post-processing, there's a report that's generated that shows you, you know, once that algorithmic post-process has been executed, what like the
Mhm.
ascertained level of accuracy was,
Right.
or what have you, as it's been established, like mathematically. But again, I think that, like, you know, the original concern was it was largely related to entities doing things that could be impacting grading on sites that don't necessarily have this
Right.
technology at their disposal, right?
Mhm. Well, yeah, and, you know, once something's in, 5 years later, you want to go back to it and say, hey, somebody threw a load of sod, a load of dirt in here when it shouldn't be there.
Mhm.
If there's some way that you can go on-site to pick it up, then you've got a way to say, hey, somebody's changed the grade here.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I want to do, is make a permanent reference point of grade at each site that says, okay, this is a 0 point for this site. I don't care what it is, but as long as in the future you can go back to that point and say, look, this has changed. Why has it changed?
Right, well, I just think,
So my next question would be, where would we use this? On every application?
On every development site, you would use it,
Or
because
what constitutes a development site?
house, a barn, whatever,
Well,
whatever
what if-
grading, whenever you're changing grade, that's what I would think you'd need to do.
Now, what if they're not changing grade, but they have to come before us? They're putting a deck on.
That wouldn't,
I mean, we're gonna put that kind
I
of
wouldn't
added
think
expense?
so.
No,
No.
no.
So, I mean, we have to have some definition on where we use it.
I think if somebody was doing a housing development, like, you know how, like, old farms and all them have all been developed over time, and the developer comes in, he buys, even Maxwell Estate will do that one. I think on those, you need a marker on, to have the elevation in order to do a subdivision or something. But if somebody was doing a deck or a little small project,
So any application that requires a topo?
Really what I'm concerned about is beyond the initial thing. 20 years later, the ground is not at the same level where it was supposed to be. And there's no way for us to check that at this point.
But I mean, if we have plans, like say for a project that was executed 10 years ago and there was some proposed grading that they would level out an area of a site to elevation, NAVD 88 elevation 100 feet above sea level, and then we look at the site and say, geez, this looks kind of whack. I mean, couldn't we put the onus on the site owner operator, or even have like some resource at our disposal to like validate the elevations using the technologies that we've been discussing? I mean,
Or
these
future
devices are,
technologies.
or even better,
Yeah,
future
to
technologies. I mean,
verify that it was
not to
100.
go off the track, but we're literally looking at like cell phone
Well,
chips. So
basically what you want to do is you want to have something on the site that says,
That you can
if
reference.
everything here was done with a instrument that was out of calibration, and it's fine the way it is, and 10 years later you go with something that's calibrated properly and it's not right,
Mm.
you have no benchmark to say, look, it's all the way it was originally built, because this mark that we have today lines up with all the marks that we are looking at. But if you don't have something on site that is permanent, you never know whether something's been changed or not, because
Then how about if we go with what John had suggested, that you put it on the foundation of the
Could
building?
you speak to people at work and get their opinion?
Well, to be frank, I'm the guy that manages and
That's what I
maintains
thought.
all of the
That's why I was being
GPS
polite.
technology. And like typical protocol would be, look at the plan. Oh, look, they said they graded it to elevation 10. And I would take my RTK corrected handheld GPS out there and I would shoot some spot elevations and compare and contrast. And yeah, I'm not sure that it's like, I mean, is it okay to say that like, oh, well, hey, 10 years ago, GPS technology was so bad, thought I was at elevation 100 and, they've graded it up to elevation 105 or something, and we're
Right.
now looking at it like, well, no, it's at
Well, let
105.
me ask you a
I
question,
mean,
since you're into the technology aspect of it. If you knew on a drawing, you had a drawing for a site, and it gave
Yep.
you an existing grade, and you went out there today
Yep.
with the equipment you had,
Yep.
if everything was according to Hoyle,
Mhm.
what would be the acceptable displacement or
My
correct.
elevations would be within 2 centimeters.
So, I guess that, to me, that raises the question, do we need to really add this expense onto somebody?
As someone that like wields this
MACC
technology, I
suggested it, basically because whatever it is, you need to say, okay, whatever they did and then we said is fine for that elevation. When they change the flood map and it's different, what are we going to do? Say, oh, you're now in a flood zone? It's kind of like, you almost need something on the property that says, this is at elevation such and such.
Mhm.
And this is, and then when you go back and it's not at elevation such and such, when his marker says this is elevation 5, and this originally was supposed to be elevation 6, but now it's elevation 7, and this is still 5, you say, wait a minute, guy, there's a problem here.
Couldn't you just do a benchmark on the plan by going to a spot and then notating that on the plan, that is the spot?
No, because what happens if somebody puts a truckload of loam there?
Well, you would just pull the plan and you would then go there with your, and it would show you that there was a change in elevation.
No, because you don't know what the base is. If you put
If he marks it in a
4
specific,
inches across your whole site, everything is going to be in relative the same.
it'd be more than 2
But not to
centimeters.
sea level. It wouldn't be relative the same to sea level, right? If I'm reporting my elevations and known vertical datums like NAVD 88, then like that's what measurements are taken from sea level, which is, well, it does change as a fairly constant reference point.
You just ate that one, didn't you?
Well, and speaking of change, in today's paper, there's a news article that
Oh,
the
the pole,
North
yeah.
Pole is changed.
Very interesting,
Yeah.
wildly,
Okay.
it's moving fast.
Okay, so if the North Pole is gonna change, and we know that sea level is in the process of changing, some of these benchmarks, all we can do is make sure that whatever we're using is constant. Now, we have a benchmark on the dam at Ellis Pond. And that whole neighborhood and that whole area can be referred to that. That's not too far away for all of the projects in that whole area. So maybe in that case, just referring to that benchmark on the plan, that's the base for this area, that would be.
Well, you certainly could do it for anything around there. My question being is, would there be, are there other benchmarks around
There
town?
are.
Then
There
would-
is, at the end of Vanderbilt.
I know there was
There's
one
a
down
boulder,
there.
there's a benchmark there, and that would cover
That
That
area.
area.
District, yeah,
So-
District 9 and
Yeah.
part of District 6, I believe, it would cover that, because you
So
could
how
take your
hard would it
elevation
to
off
do
that.
that?
So we'd need to figure out on the other parts of town where the benchmark is.
Right.
And
So like a
have
public
the,
benchmark?
have the
Yeah.
surveyor
Yeah. When I spoke
refer
to the town
to
engineer,
where
he
the
said there's only
benchmark
about a
is.
dozen benchmarks in all of the town.
Yeah.
But then, you know
make
what?
sure the whole town's covered.
We need to know where those benchmarks are, so if there's ever anything in question, then that's what we use.
Right.
And then problem solved.
Most surveyors, to be honest, wouldn't, like, they don't use those when they go to, survey a site's bounds anymore and things like that. And if you, well, I don't know, my office is at Vanderbilt. And if you were to ask someone to like come out and validate an elevation for you, it is highly unlikely that they would be referencing those benchmarks in any capacity. It's just a very archaic.
That's basically what the surveyor told me.
Yeah, it's a very archaic utility that was used for more traditional methods of like line of sight based survey that was
Yeah.
done versus modern, like again, like RTK or
Norwood
like
Engineering
geotic model.
uses a lot of those benchmarks.
I won't finish the thought.
No, but, no, I mean, they're a well-established engineering
Yeah.
company,
Yeah.
and they use a lot of the benchmarks because they've done so much in the town, they know where a lot of them are. So,
You had introduced the idea that there was a cost association, right? Like, several times I heard you say, should we consider the added
Well,
cost?
when you
Is
talk
it
about,
prohibitive, or?
well, you figure the labor for a man, I'm sure surveying company's gonna charge for, not gonna charge for a couple hours, they're gonna
$2,000,
charge,
I
yeah.
But it's going to be there anyway, because they've got to lay out the site. And, you're not, they're gonna tell you where to put the building, they're gonna mark the corners of the building. Somebody's gonna be there.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is there needs to be some way that 10 years later you can say, hey, wait a minute, guy, you filled this property by 8 inches.
okay, how about we table M,
Please.
and we all just put our thinking caps and see what can be done, and we could always ask Andy where the
I was
12
gonna say-
markers are.
I was gonna
Andy
say, Al, would
know.
you think you could, take some time out and talk to Andy and get his input on this?
On where the 12 markers are, or
And,
Or
so?
whatever.
and what he thinks would be the best way to deal with this?
He's a licensed surveyor anyway, so I
Yeah.
bet you he could give us a lot of feedback on it.
Well,
Okay, so
Well,
moving on
that's
to the next
okay.
one then, section 3, performance standards.
Basically, our thing says that in the areas that are closest to the
Page 5.
to the no-build areas, that you can put a driveway in. I would suspect that we would want a driveway that is permeable, as opposed to if we're saying you shouldn't be building anything more than a driveway, there's a reason for it, and we should just make it a permeable driveway.
Now, do we cover under that section somebody who's repaving?
Because doesn't repaving come under maintenance, Al?
Right, and they
Yeah,
can, and they
it
can
does,
repave.
yeah. And in most cases, it doesn't even require a building permit.
Right.
Right. So repaving would not change it, I would think.
But,
Well-
but new paving.
Okay,
New
let's
construction.
let's look at that. My practice has been, if somebody comes to me and says, my parking lot on my driveway is coming apart and I need to do something. And I give them two choices. I say, if you're going to take it up and start from scratch, you need to file with conservation. If you're going to patch it and coat it and maintain it, just let me know when you're going to do it, so that if somebody calls and asks, I can tell them you're just maintaining your driveway. Okay, that's the way we have been doing things for quite some time. There have been parking lots that had lots of potholes, and it was decided that they wanted to cold plane it and take up the whole thing and start from scratch. And when they did that, then we required that they update their stormwater system.
Also,
That's reasonable.
those parking lots all tended to expand in those
Yeah,
situations.
so,
too.
so at any rate, that's the way I've been handling this kind of a situation. Somebody wants to redo their whole driveway and pave the whole lot, that's one thing. If they're just gonna maintain it, that's something.
But this is
entirely-
specifically in a no-build zone
Yeah,
that we're talking about.
Right.
so,
So if somebody's gonna build something in a no-build zone, we want it to be
Permit surface.
no asphalt.
no
Yeah.
asphalt.
But they could, we could allow them to use paving blocks that allow,
Or gravel.
Gravel or paving blocks
Yeah,
or
so-
whatever.
so there's two options.
Yeah.
That's why I said add the word permeable before driveways in that section,
Mhm.
as long as it's permeable.
Makes
permeable.
good sense.
That's reasonable.
Yeah.
Okay, next item is underground recharge area. Need to add qualifications, license for teeters.
Okay, what do I need?
I don't know, that's what I was wondering.
Go look at the,
I got nothing to say.
Help us out, Joe.
Joe, come on.
Okay, I know what he was gonna, that word should be testers.
There we go.
There you go.
Now, the
Damn
question
computers.
is there any kind of a license available for somebody that's gonna be testing
Right.
these things?
That's good.
Right, is that a necessary expectation, or is this an added expectation? Someone needs to be
It's a
licensed?
requirement.
It's,
Yeah.
yeah.
So they need to produce the license, or what is it that you're asking?
Would that be like some type of like registered hydrologist?
Yeah, that's,
or-
Yeah.
Exactly.
that's
Yeah.
my question is,
Yeah.
what do you call,
What's
what
their
license is
certification?
this? Yeah,
Right.
so-
You want their certification,
Right.
that they, okay.
that they're licensed testers. I mean,
Yeah,
you just can't get the guy next door to say, hey, inspect this for me and,
Right, right.
sign it off, will
Looks
you?
good,
Yeah,
right?
but
Sign
produce-
here.
but produced how? I mean, how do
Yeah.
you want it presented, I guess is the question.
Well, I guess,
Well, add qualifications, the first part would be
yeah,
sufficient.
we need to add the qualifications that we require, and I'm not sure what they are, and require a license. Because they're referred to as licensed septic system testers and that sort of thing.
Okay.
That's what a teeter is.
All right, so next is
Typo?
section 11, effective dates, existing lots.
Okay. Basically, what we said, if a lot is in a buffer zone, before a certain year, you can build on it. But it also indicates in the state law that if you have purchased a lot, then that goes away, that you still have to file. So basically what I'm saying here is that our existing lots are subject to half the buffer requirements of the regulations and add, providing they have not changed ownership. When we did this, we didn't want to penalize people that owned property and hadn't developed it. But the state has said that if you own property and you haven't developed it, then you can go ahead and do what you need to do without pulling use the old short offset distances. But if you sell the property, now the new owner does not have the ownership rights back to that date, and they have to follow the new rules.
This 1103 is the date?
That's the wrong date, though. It would have been anything
This is-
prior to 97.
Now, this is the one that we chose for ours when we did this initially. This is what's in our bylaw.
Oh, yeah. That's right, I helped you write it.
I hope so.
But doesn't the state say 97? Anything before 97, then you
Right.
take everything in half, and anything after 97, it goes to the current one. I'm
If
pretty
it's,
sure.
if it's a new lot, like a subdivision.
Right.
But if you
Yeah.
owned the lot in 97 and you sold the lot in
Then
90,
it goes.
then it
current.
goes to the new one.
Yeah.
But we don't have that in ours.
Right.
What we say is that the owner, if you owned it in 2003,
3.
then you're not subject to our requirements. If that lot was a lot in 2003, no matter who owns it, you can then sell it. That lot was still a lot in 2003.
It says existing lots as of 1103 are subject to half the buffer requirements
Right.
of these regulations. Lots subject to zoning changes or new subdivisions after 1103 shall be subject to these regulations. In addition, all projects requiring, obtaining zoning variances after 1303 are subject to these regulations.
But I wanted to go back to what the state says, that if it's been sold after that date, then you go to the new requirements. This was just to protect, this was written to protect the owner of existing land when he wanted to build it. So he didn't have to go with the new regulations, or as tough as it. But if you hold the lot for 10 or 15 years and then you sell the lot, well, the new person's got to recognize that he doesn't have that same right.
So you don't want to penalize Farmer Joe, no pun on the name, but Farmer Joe's had this land all this time.
Right.
And now he wants to do something with it, and because he's owned it and he's paid all his mortgage and his taxes
Right.
and everything, you don't want to penalize
Right.
Farmer Joe.
Right.
But if Farmer Joe sells it to Farmer John, oh well, John,
Exactly.
you're gonna
John,
pay
you got to
for it.
recognize you're going to have to pay for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm used to that.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So that makes sense.
Okay.
Yep.
We should continue this to the
Yeah.
next meeting so that,
Okay, sounds
I mean,
good.
we can discuss other things, but I'm just saying we should need to make sure that
Yeah.
we continue it to
Do
the
we need
next.
to make a motion on that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to continue
Okay,
to
second?
February 20th.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so next is treasurer's report.
I'll have to speak with Amanda. She was gonna get me some numbers, I think with the move
Okay,
that's gone by the wayside, so I'll get them from her.
okay. Al, you're up.
Right, it's fine.
Okay,
It's not an emergency.
I had a unusual request last week in January from somebody involved with the schools. And the question was, could the schools have a project or a game on our conservation land that we've recently acquired up on Mickle Street, the church property that we bought. And what it was, they were gonna get a game together, and they were gonna put a little pot hidden in the woods out on our property, and the kids would have a gold coin. When they find the pot, they would put their gold coin in the pot, and there's some kind of reward for finding. And I approved the project because it would be good for us, and that it gets the kids out there and see what we have for outdoors and outdoor activities, and become familiar with our land. So that was
You gonna teach him what poison ivy looks like?
so
I was thinking
that,
ticks.
For the pot?
that
It's winter ticks.
that was an unusual request, and I said, well, sure, that's good for the kids and get them to know the property and that we have such a place.
That's very cool.
So that's similar to one that a few years ago, somebody was doing a game that I guess it was on the internet, and you got coordinates. off-
Geocaching.
Yeah, okay, and there was something hidden, and was you were supposed to find it from the
Oh, Pokemon.
coordinates. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay, so-
exactly what I thought.
So I thought that was a good way to get kids off their behind and outside.
Mhm,
You know, so that's that one. Today I met with a couple of people at the community garden, and they will deal with getting all the junk that's accumulated there
Hmm.
out of there when the weather breaks. So
Who
they can
controls
work
that
out.
whole process?
What?
The community garden, who controls that?
Well, the lady that is Together Yes organization has coordinated that, and a prominent citizen of our group, our town here, I don't know if anybody knows him, but Vic Babel, who used to own Babel's
Mhm.
Paint Store, he sold his business, and he's now got involved with the community garden, and he was there with me, and I've known him for many years, and he will get people to deal with the mess.
Well, one of the things I was thinking about is part of the mess is probably just a condition of the facility in itself. You know, it creates it because there's no place for them to store some
Well,
stuff too.
Okay,
that's-
so my comment was, if somebody brings something there, at the end of the garden season, it should go away,
Mhm.
okay? And what's there right now is a whole bunch of stuff that people have given to other people, figuring that they could use it in their garden, okay? Things like outside chairs and stools, and it was explained to me there's a 95-year-old lady that they got a stool for her to sit on, and she sits and watches her garden grow. Well, she doesn't touch anything, she's too old to do anything, but her relatives come and tend it, and she sits and watches. Okay, so.
I wouldn't want that stool wintering and then have her come
Yeah,
sit on it.
okay, so at any rate, a lot of that stuff is not necessary. Then there were a bunch of big pots that somebody else thought, well, they could be used to grow things in. Well, nobody's used them, so they're gonna get out of there.
Mhm.
And all the other stuff that doesn't belong there.
Oh, I agree
So
that
at
the
the end of
cleaning
the-
it up is.
At the end of the season, it should be cleaned up and let go to natural through the winter, and they understood that, so that's what is going on there. They will do this as soon as it's suitable for working outside.
Yesterday.
The Milton Community Garden is so clean it looks like a park. And it's like that all year round.
Yeah.
Nice.
So
Maybe
at any
we-
rate, there's no need of all that stuff, and most of it doesn't belong to anybody. It's been donated, and it's not necessary.
Maybe we can send them a letter, very nice letter, stating that you bring it, you remove it, and just say they can't have,
Well, they will do that to their members.
Yeah, you said we just need to, at the end of the growing seasons,
Yeah.
remind them, that's
but
all.
you also don't, even on any community garden and that, you don't want a bunch of empty pots and everything, piling up, because it just looks like litter, and people need to realize that community garden is in a neighborhood.
Yeah.
Right, but
It's in
we-
a neighborhood.
So they know that, and they will.
Okay.
The
deal
more
with it.
important, a letter doesn't really do anything. If we see something building up, we can mention it to Al, he can speak to them during the
So-
season and deal
So
with it.
let's give them a little time to get.
I mean, if you send me a letter warning,
Get
you
a
have to do
couple
something
of,
now, am I gonna remember it?
a couple of
Thanksgiving?
truckloads of stuff
No.
has to go.
You got anything else, Al?
I want to ask Al something.
Okay, ask me.
BJ's, gas station, the embankment. They
That
have,
slope.
they have hay bales at the top of it. Shouldn't they use swaddles or something else?
Well, they
instead of
have
all
the
that
whole,
hay?
the whole slope is covered with about 6 inches of straw.
Yeah, but it's
and
the
all of that
fabric
will-
stuff.
that-
They have
that's-
actual hay bales
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
moo, let me come over and eat.
Yeah. But that's to hold it through the winter. When the spring comes and it's time to do something, they're gonna have to solve the problem.
Yeah.
And
Oh, I'm not
Well-
talking about the slope itself. The slope itself is nice and neat, how they have it. I'm talking about the hay bales that are breaking down due to the weather and everything.
they're gonna have to get out of there.
Okay,
Paul and I will sit down with them
What we
and
have to do.
get a solution to the problem.
okay. How are our
Would we
enforcement
adopt it
orders
as
going
something
with our
language?
friends
Is
that
that
have all the
documented?
junk behind the one apartment
I-
building?
I don't know.
Okay.
That's just,
I haven't heard anything
Did you ever
back.
find
not-
out on
no,
who
that
owns
is
the
the problem.
property on Dean
It's
Street
not
that has
in
all
our
the
regs
pallets and the
properly.
portable bar and all the
No.
other stuff
No,
that
I
are
haven't,
accumulating?
3 to 1 slope.
I
We
haven't
really want a 1 to 3
found
slope.
out that.
Right.
Okay,
And
And I can't find it where it is.
Okay.
the apartment building one, maybe we, if we don't get any response, I think Ramonda sent out the second time,
okay.
and if we don't get any response, we should probably start proceeding for a fine.
Okay. All right, I just want to stay on top of those. So, all right, thank you.
Anything else, Al?
Let's see, at March 2nd is the MACC conference in Holy Cross in Worcester. And we should be getting things into Ramonda to sign you up for something. And I'm sure you, if you look on your website, you should have something that tells you what all the choices of workshops, there are 30 of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to take, let's see, green infrastructure, those mainstream benefits and applications. That sounds like something new that I haven't seen before, which is my goal. You know, I don't want to do the same things over and over again. So, and then the MS4 general permit. You know, the new federal requirements has come into play.
Are those requirements stable, or are they going to change?
Well, that's why I want to go to that and hear what the latest interpretations are. Because it could go from one extreme to another, you know, and I want to be on top of that. And then in the afternoon, conserving open space with Chapter 61. And the reason my concern there is Kofsky Farm could come under that. Chapter 61 is one of these programs where you give up your rights for development in return for a tax break.
Mhm.
And the outcome of that isn't always satisfactory, but at the end, the person can still sell the property, and if somebody buys it and wants to develop it, they have to pay back all the tax abatements that have been granted over the years on the property. My experience with that is Walpole Adams Farm. When the owner of that died and his son inherited the property, his father hadn't protected any of it, so the federal government was taking at least 55% of his value in taxes, inheritance tax, because the property there in Walpole was a small operation, but the big operation was down in New Bedford. And so he had to sell something to pay the big bill. Well, when he did that, the town came into play, and we did two things. First of all, he had to pay back the taxes that were abated under the program, and then of course the town bought the property after it was
Discounted.
well, what the process was, in order to get the best price for the property, he had it proposed for development and the best, highest use, which is single-family houses, and therefore that made the price of the land go up sky high. But that's the legal way of doing it. So I've experienced this Chapter 61 in other places, but Kofsky Farm isn't under it at the present time, but maybe in the future it ought to be, so that it continues as a farm.
I'd almost rather see a land trust, the Aquidneck Island Land Trust I speak
Well,
of.
some of these are land trusts. It can be a land trust, but there's a state law that provides this.
Well, it doesn't guarantee you much. Basically, it can say that after 5 years, the taxes are minimal. You get the taxes back, and they'll still develop it. But if you put it in a land trust, you pay more money up front. The owner pays less in taxes, or significantly less, because the land isn't worth anything in terms of building it and selling it. And he has the right to use it and sell it, but the trust is such that he can use it anyway as he uses it, but he can't build on it. They come up with two levels. One level is where there's no public access to the land, which means the land is worth, he gets a higher amount of money for it. If there's no public access, or if there is public access, he gets less money for it. And but he still owns the land. I think a land trust is, it's permanent, as opposed to perhaps somebody buying it back.
Well, at any rate, there's a workshop on Chapter 61, which I proposing to take. And then, since it's been proposed that we deal with Trap Hole Brook, the dam there, number 24 in the afternoon is dam removal and sediment management. So I'm going to get involved in that. So I have up-to-date information there.
That is more,
So at any rate, it's time to sign up for those workshops if you're going to go.
Anything else, Al?
No, that's enough.
Okay. Proposal for future agenda items, anything there? No, okay. CPC representatives report.
Well, we have to move our pavilion
What?
from where we wanted it on the lot because we have to make it handicap accessible. You can't build a sidewalk that far, so what we're going to do when we worked with Mark Schubert and John, Al and I went out there and saw our butterfly gardens here and we have all these boulders over here. We're gonna back up the boulders about 8 feet so we can get a handicap parking spot in there. And then we can get other off-street parking so we're not on the street. And then our pavilion will actually sit here instead of over
where's the
here.
curb cut gonna be?
No curb.
No
There's no
curb,
curb cut.
you drive right in.
There's no curb there.
There is no curb.
On Endicott Street, there's no curb.
It's on
at all.
Endicott, it's
There's no
just,
sidewalk
you'd be-
there.
There's no sidewalk and
No,
beyond there?
no.
nope,
No, it's on the other side of the
nope,
street.
on the other side,
Oh, okay,
on the other side where the houses
So
are.
just cut back some of the loop
Yeah.
and put gravel.
okay.
So then that will make us handicap accessible because we already own the handicap picnic tables that are going under the pavilion.
It's a more peaceful area down there.
It is, and then,
Nicer view too.
yeah,
Yeah.
and we can figure out something to do with the other part of the lot later on. But this allows somebody to park that's handicapped to go right into the pavilion. So it's problem solved.
Mhm.
So this
So-
was like related to ADA compliance or?
The rules and regulations are changing in the state of Maine. Wow, my mother's speaking to me from her grave. In the state of Massachusetts, that when you use any type of fundings and that, you have to bring it up to ADA requirements. So, and we've been buying ADA picnic tables.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the pavilion and the slab, how we have it will be compliant to it. And the way we're situating the picnic tables, we have the aisle width and everything. And that's why we got the size of the pavilion that we did to allow the radius of the wheelchairs to spin. But we need the shortest point of travel. the
It would
shortest
seem the
point of
neighbors
travel.
would use that more anyway because they're not sitting out on 1A Walpole Street
Yeah.
being looked at.
You know what, it'll benefit
Of course,
everybody
the kids will
on,
use it at
Yeah.
10 o'clock at night too, though.
That's exactly right.
well, you know what, I don't think they will because of the fact, I think they would on this side, but the fact that we're moving it over here where it's more visibility to the neighborhood, I think the likelihood will be less. Plus, we're putting in the solar light and then the cops doing their drive-bys.
Oh, no, I'm not concerned about it as much. Kids are gonna do it no matter
Yeah.
what. But I mean, people live right there. If they're being a nuisance, they'll do
Yeah,
something about
they'll
it.
do something. But then it'll just benefit the development at the end. It'll benefit the condos here and all the houses and stuff. And, I don't know who said it when we were out there, but there is a nice view of the backside of the pond over here. So it just makes sense.
Yeah,
And you know what? It's not built yet, so we just go from here to here.
yeah, it's a better spot.
Yeah.
Well, you know, in this guideline that we were just discussing, we have the 100 feet from the river and the 200 feet from the river, okay? In the 100 feet, first 100 feet from the river, you're not supposed to build anything anyway. That's supposed to be a no disturb spot, and we should be observing the regulations as much as we can, so that somebody kind of turn around and say, oh, you did it yourselves. What?
Well, the other location, how we were putting it, we were out of the 100 foot.
Yeah, we
But-
just have to make sure of that.
This is flatter over here. It's flatter, and there's another area where there's a couple trees, and it would make a wonderful shade garden.
Yeah,
So,
and have it not too far from that, you know?
yeah, so it'll be nice.
Mhm.
We'll make it all pretty and,
Assuming we get funding.
huh?
Assuming we have funding.
Well, yeah, we've got to do the presentation to town meeting, and it goes to vote. So, we have the smallest project being presented,
Mhm.
but that's okay.
I present before the override conversation.
Okay?
So that's where we are. It's still in process, grading process and that.
So we're all set on that then?
Yep.
Before we close, do you have something to say, Tony, or?
No, just
visiting?
stopping by to visit. I haven't
Okay.
made one of your meetings in quite a while, so I'm just making my rounds.
All righty.
Yeah, because you don't have anything better to do, right?
So in that case,
Well, this is our school committee meeting, so I chose you guys.
I will entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn, please.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Tony, have you been up